are you ready to actually start becoming a digital nomad? This is the 𝐂𝐮𝐬 podcast for season 2. We are focusing on the different types of digital nomads that are out there. Our guests every single week are going to be people who are deep into their amazing careers, their businesses, their journey basically in being a digital nomad. And we'll basically see and listen to their stories and be able to find out what the journey actually is when you're becoming a digital nomad. What are the pros and cons if that's something that you're considering? So as you're ready to ditch the grind and actually scale you, we've got you. So our guest today is another speaker that I met during the 𝐵𝐵𝐵𝐺 Nomad Fest. And I remember the very first time that I heard what she's doing basically in her entrepreneurship journey, I just locked in. I'm like, I'm going to talk to this woman. So I'm super excited for you guys to learn more about her journey, about her life. And she also has a little surprise for you guys at the very end. Now for our guest, Astrid Heystee is a business and human design coach, and she blends her experience in business, marketing, and self-development. Her journey to having a stress-free life started in 2016 and has resulted into a location-independent entrepreneurial journey. As you guys will hear later in the podcast, Astrid learned the hard way that you need to listen to your body and underwent a transformative period of inner work when the personal development system of human design crossed her path. With her human design embodiment workshops, coaching programs, and as well as her podcast, Travel and Work with Human Design, she empowers entrepreneurs to tame their inner critic, reduce stress, and embrace joy and well-being. With a holistic approach, she intertwines mindset, inner work, and business strategy in the creation of a stress-free lifestyle. Hey guys, so let me introduce to you the amazing Astrid to the 𝐂𝐮𝐬 podcast. Welcome, Astrid.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, glad that you're here because I think the little time that we did go over your journey and what you've done basically when we met in 𝐵𝐵𝐵𝐺 kind of interested me. And for a lot of the people who want to go and becoming a nomad, they want to see what that's like, what other professions they could even do, what kind of business they can dive into. So I'm excited for us to kind of share a little bit of your story. So with that, let's start with the very beginning of who were you before you became a nomad?
So I worked in marketing for pretty much all of my career. So I was a marketing and event manager in the tourism industry and in the publishing world. So I was a brand marketer doing everything marketing. So big branding campaigns, a lot of magazines and events that I had under my care, lead generation, the whole thing. And yeah, it was really fun. But I actually met my first digital nomad in 2010 in Melbourne, Australia, when I was on my world trip. And that's where the first seed was planted. And even though I really liked the job that I was in, it was also very stressful and very demanding. And I really craved back that freedom that I got while traveling the world, living in Australia. And yeah, that really sparked me on how can I create a life with less stress, essentially.
Got it. And I love that vision as well of what's the life with less stress. So then, what does life look like for you now? Like, what's your day to day? How often do you travel? You're exploring different types of digital nomads. So, would love to know what does that day to day look like for you?
Well, my day-to-day is definitely being very present in the moment and also really learning to listen to my body. So actually what happened to me while I was living my dream life, so to kind of revert back to a little bit of my journey, when I set out as a freelancer, marketing freelancer, and I went on my one-way trip to Asia, I just bought a house as an asset at the different side of my country to be closer to family. And I was living the dream. And when the stress fell away from my demanding career, actually my body went into repair mode. And what I never could see what would happen is that I actually lost the ability to walk from one day to another. 5 days before Nomad Cruise 2019, I think Marcel referred to that Nomad Cruise. I was supposed to be on that Nomad Cruise. I literally missed the boat. And instead, I was wheeled to the hospital having emergency surgery because apparently I walked with a hernia for 20 years. And
Whoa.
if you don't do anything about that and you have, I was always in my head, very much driven, very mentally, and I just completely ignore the signals. But at some point, your body will stop you. So
Yeah.
instead of working location independent from this exotic place somewhere in South America, I was working location independent from my home here in the Netherlands, rotating the sun essentially from room to room as the sun traveled around my house. And I was in lockdown 4 months before everybody else was in lockdown during the pandemic.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that definitely changed a few things for me, and also really
That's
made me
great. Yeah.
very appreciative of being location independent, because that meant that I could continue working and also had the time and the freedom of my agenda, so I can actually work in cycles and work in small blocks and incorporate lots of yoga and activities and walking and biking and enjoying nature in my day
Mm.
as well. So, coming back to your question, how does my day look like now? It's really working with how my energy is feeling. Human design came on my path during that time as well.
Mm.
Yeah, and of course, it's quite a trip when something like that happens, when your health is taken away from you so suddenly. And yeah, really working with my energy. And I work in short cycles now. So I work for 2 hours, and then I go out, have a walk or a bike ride, then work a little bit more, and kind of divide my time working um, based on how I feel and where I feel most productive.
Got it. I didn't know. You told me a little bit of the story of like not being able to walk. I didn't know that much of a detail and how close it was also to the lockdowns. I remember you told me a little bit of like how you're kind of figuring out how trying to see what you could do more online, but I didn't know it was that intense. So thank you for sharing that part, because I know for a lot of people, whenever the topic of illness, especially something that's a little bit long term, something that isn't covered by a 7 day week leave, it's a little bit of a harder thing to balance. Of course, like, do I choose my career or do I choose taking care of myself, slowing down a little bit? And with, I can see definitely that with you discovering kind of digital nomad at kind of the right time, like, the universe always guides us the right things, kind of the right time of like when you needed a little bit of that rest, a little bit of that break, that you were able to find it. So that's fantastic. So tell me more about human design. And I remember, for those who have, for of course those who have no idea, we'll explain a little bit. But I remember when I found out that that's what you did. I don't know if you remember, but I zoomed in on you and I'm like, okay, I want to talk to you because I've not yet found anyone else who talks about this. So tell us more about human design and what kind of drew you in.
So, human design is a personal development system, and it really helps you to give yourself the permission to be yourself. It helps you to understand how you operate, why you behave a certain way, and also why others behave a different way given the same situation. So, it really helps with that self discovery and self awareness of who you are and what's important to you, and also how your energy works in that sense. So it's a combination of a lot of esoteric old knowledge together with science. And
Mm.
it's really a logical system in that sense. And you can go to my website. If you go to palmtreemoments.com/chart, you can find your own human design chart based on your birthday, your birth time, and your birthplace. And that is used as a calculation method to see where the positions of the planets were during your birth, basically the moment that you entered the atmosphere when you
Mhm.
were born and took your first breath. And that really gives you an energy imprint, if you will. So it's a lot about neutrinos, and that's a tiny little particle in the atmosphere. That's the most abundant particle. We still don't know a whole lot about it. There's a lot of
Mm.
science being done to figure that out. There's a science base on Antarctica trying to figure out what this little particle does. Um, the scientists focus on the energy part, and human design proposes as a system that it's energy plus information. And
Mhm.
by kind of diving into what that energy blueprint, if you will, that imprint looks like, it can really help you give the validation for what is your nature, what is your natural way of doing. And then also we
Mm.
have nurture, which is how we grew up, what kind of family you were born into, what was your country that you grew up in, and the culture and etc. So it kind of gives you that balance of like, okay, what is nature and what is nurture?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a beautiful system for sure.
Got it. Well, that's a really good way of explaining that. And I remember I got introduced to human design, I think perfectly like 2 years ago now. And when I had a friend also nerd out about human design and how it's changing a lot of how they're thinking themselves and making a lot of sense on why certain phases of their lives felt more frustrating a little bit, also phases in their life but it was just smooth sailing basically. So I also imagine that as you've kind of got into it, how long have you been doing human design?
So human design came on my path just after that emergency operation, and it really, that event really sparked me on this inner journey as well, right? Because I had to let go of all expectations, I had to let go of my dreams of travel, and luckily, I came back, and slowly, as I milestone before milestone got my health back, I combated my fears of traveling. I never knew how much I could do, so everything was a milestone. And human design was a tool that really helped me in that process as well. And I think the biggest gift that it gave me was to tame my inner critic, because I was so in my head all the time, and I was worrying about all these decisions and, everything that I said or didn't say. And then I would, mull over at night over all these things that happened during the day. And I was very much in my head. And because of this accident, of this emergency thing that happened in the surgery, I was forced to really learn to listen to my body and to really, really ground myself in the present moment. And that's also when I really learned how to reconnect with my gut feeling that I was following when I was living in Australia, making all the decisions on the whim, right? Because when I had that moment of freedom in my world trip, we only had to make the decision, do we go left or do we go right? And reconnecting back to living life with my gut feeling, that really gave me the tools to kind of tame that, whatever's happening up here with what I call the shitty committee.
I love that, and I actually that same friend of mine who introduced me to human design also introduced me to the idea of naming the negative voices in your head, because then you know that it is separate from you, because like any negative voice in your head is not you, it's put there by someone else, so it's good to separate it. So I love that picture of kind of how you basically rose from the ashes like a phoenix. You found a little bit of your love, you kind of have been teaching and getting people to where you're at, basically to that point of hey, I can follow my instinct, I don't have to listen to a bajillion million other things, I can just follow basically where I want to go and it'll take me basically where it is. So with that, then how has that kind of impacted your journey of being a digital nomad? Like being someone who networks a lot or meets a lot of fantastic and amazing people, what kind of pieces of lessons basically that you have you learned, both having that life that you have, where you have to balance really taking care of your health, not because it is a privilege, but it's because it's a need at that point, and also at the same time kind of exploring and growing yourself in the digital nomad space?
So what I like about the digital nomad lifestyle is essentially that there's no rules, right? There's also no definition to what a digital nomad is. It's more of a lifestyle, what I call the freedom lifestyle. And combining being home with my cats, because I got cats during Corona time as well, and being able to travel, for me, that's a really nice balance. And being able to work location independent from my home base or from a place somewhere else on this world really gave me the opportunity to travel and work and combine that, and to kind of do both, have basically the both of best worlds in that sense. And being a digital nomad, I think a lot of people, and this is also what I teach in my program, the Hexagon of Freedom. It's a method that I created because a lot of people think it's about attaining financial freedom or having control of your time, with time freedom and location freedom, making your work go remote. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also other parts, and that's the freedom from your inner critic. That's the freedom of not having stress, and also the freedom to prioritize listening to your body and to really have that healthy lifestyle and healthy habits in your life as well. So that's why, it's a little bit more than just the freedom to
Mm-hmm.
just go to a different country and work, but also to really live your life on your own terms and to create your own rules essentially.
I love that. I love that. Uh, and it's funny because like most of the time, whenever someone hears digital nomad, they see exactly what you just talked about, like the time freedom, the location freedom, forgetting also that it's one of, if you don't know essentially yourself, like what you're bringing into it, what are your own goals are, it's one of the fastest path basically to being burned out and not really knowing what it is that you wanted in the first place, because you kind of stumbled into it rather than intentionally going into it. So I love that you have your program as well. So can you tell us more about kind of what someone could expect? Like let's say someone's listening to this right now, they're exploring how to be a digital nomad, they hear about you, what you do. What could they expect when it comes to working with you, and how that could ultimately affect essentially their journey being a digital nomad?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting question. So for me, it's essentially about creating a lifestyle first and then mold your business around it. I'm a very down to earth
Mm,
practical person, and of course I have a marketing background, so I'm combining these things. So
mm,
for me, it's all about setting up the lifestyle first. So we do some exercises around, okay, what is the inner critic doing, what
mm,
stories are you telling yourself, okay, and then work on that little piece, the inner backpack that I call that. And then we kind of morph into, okay, but how do you want to spend your 24 hours in a day, because we all have 24 hours in a day,
mm,
but how you spend those, and how, where and how do you want to work, that is yeah, what we first work on,
mm,
because it's all about creating a lifestyle that brings you joy and fulfillment, and also give you some purpose and
mm.
lets you explore different places in the world. But sometimes that also means working from home, right? There's no set way. That is just what it is. And then kind of see how those needs match to what your business can look like. So, for example, how do you set up your lifestyle first and then mold your business around that? So you can work basically with your energy instead of against it.
Got it. I love it. I love the working with your energy instead of against it. So then I am curious, like what has been either a challenge or bottleneck, something that as someone is getting into becoming a digital nomad, or kind of learning how to work with their energy instead of against it, that you would kind of give as a, not a precaution, but just like something that you've gone through and how you've gone solved through it. Basically, being a digital nomad, being someone who's in the human design space, what were those challenges like from the time that you basically got into it, which is right in the pandemic, into where you are now?
Hmm. Well, what comes to mind is dealing with the guilt while traveling, because there's a
Mm,
balance there, right? So when you're traveling, you feel guilty because you're not working. And then when you're working, you feel guilty because you're traveling. But then
mm,
again, you set out this whole plan of becoming a digital nomad so you could travel. So
true.
it's kind of finding that balance there, and also finding the systems in your energy. And you can see that
Mm,
in your chart basically, when we look at definition. So I have a split definition. Knowing
mm,
that, then that gives me the intel that I need some people around me as well. I can work really well from my own apartment, but at some
mm,
point I really need to have other people around me as well. So a co-working space, and joining a co-working space and be
got
able
it.
to find a community in that
Mm,
sense. I think community is so important. But yeah, having that intel to kind of see like, okay, how do I operate? Where am I super productive? For example, if you have a triple split definition, so
mm,
that means that you have three centers of island energy,
mm,
islands. Going to a library is something that's really beneficial, because you
mm,
can sit next to a person, work there, and kind of tap into the other person's energy, but you don't engage in a conversation, right? But it helps you with your productivity level. So kind of knowing how you operate and using that intel to kind of set out your day. I think as a tip for digital nomads or people who are aspiring to be a digital nomad, I think joining a network or a community online or finding the events in your area to go and meet these people, surround yourself with people who are a little bit further in your process. That is so, so helpful because it gives you the possibility to see the possibilities, right? Because when we're in our own little world, we think a certain way, we behave a certain way, and maybe we've thought to be or behave like a certain way. But once you go to an event and meet all these wonderful stories and from all these different angles and perspectives, you realize that there's so many opportunities to do this lifestyle. There's not one way to do it. So I think community is really, really key for people who are considering this lifestyle.
God, wonderfully said. And I love how you kind of really painted that. Where the first thing out of my head, like, oh, I should have had my chart open, so I can, like, anytime that she's bringing something up, I'm like, oh, I do have that, or something like that. But the second thing is, like, I agree with, definitely, with, like, surrounding yourself with people who are like that, because, like, a lot of the time, I'm definitely this kind of person, which is why I need to travel or see the world. Is it's going to be hard for your mind to believe that something else exists, especially when you're bombarded every single day about, like, no, this is the only truth, this is the only way to live life. And by surrounding yourself with a community, especially, I can imagine for the digital nomad community, where it's always changing, just because this person might be leaving, this person is just arriving, or this person has stayed here for the last 3 months, can tell you everything that you need to know, and then now they're going to the next country. So I can imagine how ever changing and inspiring, to be honest, it would actually be. So curious then, Astrid, and this is my favorite question to always ask on the podcast, is, let's say there was a second you or a third you or an army of you. There's like 300 Astrids ready to change the world. What is that change that you want to see in the world?
Well, I think the whole reason why I created my company, Palm Tree Moments, for me, I grew up in the Netherlands. We don't have palm trees here. But when I see a palm tree, I have no stress, right? I associate that with, feeling relaxed and having no stress. So for me, that's why I created my company called Palm Tree Moments, because I think we all need less stress moments and have more relaxing moments. So I think for me, having more impact in this world is really learning people that they are completely unique, so they don't need to compare themselves to anybody else, because there's only one you on this whole wide world. You are like a cosmic event, right? A once in a lifetime cosmic event. And really to step into your power, because you don't need fixing. Everything is already in you. You just need to find the keys. And as a coach, that's what I do, right? As a business and human design coach, I bring you some keys so you can unlock your personal growth within you, because it's all there. You just need to kind of unlock it, walk into the bank and open up the vault.
Got it. I love it. You don't need fixing. Everything's already within you. That's a beautiful quote to wrap up on. So then, how can people find you? I know you have a surprise for people who are listening or watching this. How can people find you and get to know you a little bit better?
So for me, human design, there's a lot of knowledge, right? And it can be very overpowering when you first see your chart. So what I do, and what I actually created, is for the Hexagon of Freedom. And now I made that available for everybody because they found it so helpful as a tool. So I create these custom-made human design reports based on your chart. So you can kind of cut a check for speed and kind of find the information that's relevant for you. So for all the listeners who want to explore human design a little bit further, you can create a free chart on my website if you go to palmtreemoments.com/chart, or with the coupon code you get a 10% discount, and the coupon code is 𝐂𝐿2XU podcast, and I'm sure it will be in the show notes. But to kind of give you a little bit of a shortcut into this knowledge and to really use it in a more practical way, because that's what it's all about, right? You only need a few things to get started and to have it as practical as possible so you can start using it the next day. And yeah, that's what I'm all about, having this knowledge to use it and to create a life of freedom, essentially.
Amazing. Well, again, all of that will be in the notes below, everywhere else once we promote this podcast episode. This has been amazing, Astrid. Thank you so much for sharing your time and knowledge and a lot of really good nuggets as well. I believe my own marketing team, when they're going through this and cleaning this up, they will have a lot of like clips because you just shared a lot of really good affirmations, a lot of validation for people who are getting started or trying to find essentially their own energy and their own place in the world. So thank you so much for your time today, Astrid.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it was so lovely to meet you in Bank Square in person. And I can't wait where we meet again.
For sure. So again, please go ahead, of course, and follow Astrid so you can follow along on her journey, so you can also find out a little bit more about yourself as well, especially as you start scaling you. Now, of course, if you guys like this episode, make sure to hit that like button right there wherever you are watching, whether you're Spotify, YouTube, anywhere else that we are available. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and comment below any questions that you might have for Astrid as well. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can hear every single week about the amazing people that we're having here on the Scale You podcast. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and remember that small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.